Now welcome back again. Today we go back to Gopal. Gopal is the 10th. She represents the 10th Bodhisattva stage, the stage of coronation, the stage of being the rain cloud of the Dharma, which, by the way, is the final stage within the Yoga Sutra, amazingly. Somehow they got that from the Mahayana Sutra. I mean, it's just, the Mahayana Sutra got it from Patanjali, whichever. I don't think so. So anyway, Gopal, and this is the setting, symbolizes the essence and function of knowledge and compassion reaching everywhere, immaterial yet nurturing and supporting all beings. Subtle material, immaterial, subtle material, we can say. The setting is the same as that of the first stage, represented by the night goddess Vasanti, the 31st benefactor. Because knowledge and compassion are simultaneous, and actually the first stage corresponds to generosity, transcendent generosity being the same as compassion and the same as knowledge. In fact, because ultimately all 10 transcendences are the same, since no one of them can be completely fully realized until all of them are completely fully realized. So in a way, it's very appropriate that the setting goes back, I just noticed that, to the one of the night goddess Vasanti. And Gopa has the name of watching over or protecting cows, actually Gopala, protector of cows, which are the source of wealth, of milk, of sustenance, or in India, for representing the preservation of the ground of great compassion. That's the milk of great compassion that is being protected. So according to the story, Gopal was wife of Buddha in the past life, representing kindness, compassion, and delight in truth. She is also said to have been wife to Buddha for aeons, symbolizing the inseparability of knowledge and compassion. And knowledge attuned to reality is omnipresent. It cannot be discussed in terms of matter, cannot be discussed in terms of form or appearance, or non-matter for that matter. It manifests similarity to humans and demonstrates human-like laws. It manifests similarities to celestial gods and demonstrates divine ways. It is variegated according to the species to which it appears. It cannot be known by one practice, cannot be understood by one body. This is because that is the nature of the body of practices of universal good. So then we go, these 10,000 goddesses originally welcome him with the goddess Sorrowless, and then Gopa herself has 84,000 goddesses, maidens of royal lineage around her, and all of them were engaged the same as her. So she tells the most extraordinary story about her and Siddhartha and Shakyamuni in a previous life when he was a prince, Lord of Glory he was called. Glory Lord and so on, which is marvelous. So the 10 teachers who follow Gopa represent the practice of universal good in the 11th stage, and they're very interesting because none of them give much teaching. They go on with that, except for even Maya doesn't give that much, but she reborns him in infinite terms, So the 11th stage reminds me of Thich Nhat Hanh, saying that he will be reincarnated as a community. And actually, the Dalai Lama, or Avalokiteshvara, is always incarnated as a community, and even Shakyamuni was. Because why would you go to be a Buddha for beings, except you want to come as many bodies, to create a whole drama for the beings, to fold into a bringing out their Buddha nature as massive number of beings as possible. So that's really what's going on. So on we go. Okay, number 40, Gopa, which is the 10th, the coronation. And Gopa is why was Yashodhara the wife of Shakyamuni Buddha? She is the partner of all Buddhas, Gopa. Then Sudana left Lumbini goddess and went to the city of Kapilavastu. cultivating that enlightening liberation of vision of miracles of birth of enlightening beings in all objects over countless ages, entering into it, expanding it, practicing it, purifying it, mastering it, contemplating it, examining it, he made his way to the meeting hall of enlightening beings reflecting the cosmos. When he went there, a goddess of the enlightening beings meeting hall named Sorrowless, together with 10,000 house goddesses, appeared before Sudana and said to him, "Welcome is the great person with wisdom, knowledge, and courage, who roams the grounds of the vast palace of reality, intent on cultivating the inconceivable liberation of enlightening beings, in the presence of the city of truth, ceaselessly entering into the endless methods of enlightening beings, attaining manifestation of the ocean of virtues of those who realize thusness, aiming for the knowledge of how to act and speak so as to mature all people, acting and aiming all people, mind-oriented toward spiritual practice, committed to increasing the flood of the ocean of joy and the feelings of all beings, on the path of knowledge, of the teaching of all those who arrive at thusness. As I see you, with steady gaze and the pure realm of conduct of profound spiritual practice, before long you will attain perfection of the supreme ornaments of body, speech, and mind of the enlightened, and will act in the world with a body adorned with the marks and embellishment of greatness, and a mind adorned with the light of knowledge of the 10 powers. As I see your steadfast, energetic exertion, before long you will be furnished with all the requisites for manifesting your being in the presence of all Buddhas of past, present, and future. Receiving those their teachings, experiencing the delight of the tranquil palace of spirituality, with all the meditations, liberations, concentrations, and attainments of enlightening beings, you will see into the profound liberation of Buddhas. That is because you do not tire, do not regress, do not feel pain in going to spiritual benefactors, meeting them, associating with them, receiving instructions, and applying the ways to virtue, and you are not overcome by an interference or barrier or obstacle, or by any demon or deity. Therefore, you will soon become a source of joy for all beings." This was quite a welcome Sudana received from Gopa's house goddesses, not yet Gopa. Then Sudana said to the goddess Ashoka, sorrowless, "May it be as you say. I would find supreme joy in extinguishing the burning of all beings' addictions, in stopping the development of their evil deeds, in making them all happy, in getting them to act impeccably. Whenever sentient beings are involved in evil deeds and addictions, with scattered minds, fall into painful and pleasurable states, and experience various forms of physical and mental distress, enlightening beings become most unhappy at that. Just as a doting parent would love its only child and would be most distressed at seeing the child be dismembered. In the same way, a practicing enlightening being is most unhappy to see people fall into miserable states because of compulsion by addictions in action. Whenever sentient beings live in felicity because of good thoughts, words, and deeds, and experience physical and mental pleasures in celestial, divine, and human realms, enlightening beings are delighted and become happy and joyful. Furthermore, enlightening beings do not seek omniscience for their own sake, nor to produce mundane enjoyments and pleasures, nor in search of the various enjoyments of the realm of desire, nor under the compulsion of the errors of conception, thought, and view. They live and work in the world without being controlled by fetters, bonds, propensities, or obsessions or instincts, without being controlled by craving or views, without their minds being bound up in ideas of mundane enjoyments, without being taken with the taste of pleasure of meditation, without being blocked by mental barriers. Furthermore, enlightening beings giving rise to great compassion for sentient beings suffering immeasurable miseries in the ocean of existence undertake a great vow to care for all beings. They appear carrying out the practice of enlightening beings in the mundane world, engaged in the development and guidance of sentient beings by the force of the power of Buddhas in quest of thoroughly unobstructed omniscience for all sentient beings. By mastery of the vow to serve Buddhas, they do not tire in enlightening practice. While they carry on enlightening practice, seeing defiled lands, they undertake a vow to purify all Buddha lands. While purifying oceans of lands, observing the variety of being states, they undertake a vow to purify the undifferentiated supreme reality body. Seeing sentient beings' acts, words, and thoughts defiled, they undertake a vow to purify sentient beings' acts, words, and thoughts. Seeing sentient beings with incompletely purified senses and minds, they carry on enlightened practice tirelessly, completely purifying the mental behavior of all sentient beings. Thus, enlightening beings are indefatigable in carrying out the infinitely various practice of enlightening beings. Practicing in this way, they become ornaments of heaven and earth. By producing human and celestial and divine welfare, they become parents because they bring enlightening beings into existence. They become nurses, leading into the path of enlightening beings. They become guardian spirits, giving protection from the danger of falling into bad ways. They become great mariners, ferrying beings across the ocean of the mundane world. They become refuges, eliminating the dangers of all demons and addictions. They become resorts, leading to the ultimate state of coolness. They become landings, leading into the ocean of enlightenment. They become guides, leading to the island of spiritual jewels. They become flowers, their minds blossoming with the virtues of all Buddhas. They become beauties and adornments, radiating the light of great virtue and knowledge. They become sources of supreme joy, pleasing in all ways. They become womb visiting. They become worth visiting. They become worth visiting because they act impeccably. They become universally good, perfecting themselves in all respects. They become universally good, perfecting themselves in all respects. They become an ever welcome sight, never appearing disagreeable. They become light makers, emanating light beams of knowledge. They become illuminators, holding the lamp of truth. They become radiant, purifying the will for enlightenment. They become warrior chiefs, stopping the acts of demons. They become suns, radiating webs of light rays of wisdom. They become moons, the moon of awareness rising in the sky. They become clouds, showering the teaching on all beings. Thus do enlightening beings become a joy to all living creatures as they carry out enlightening practice. Then sorrowless Ashoka, goddess of the hall of assembly of enlightening beings, with those 10,000 house goddesses, showered Sudana with the rain of mentally created flower garlands, aromatic powders, perfumes, and jewelry, all superior to those in the heavens. Then, surrounding him, they sang these verses in his praise as he entered the abode of enlightening beings. Buddhas emerge in the world at times, producing the light of knowledge, resolved on perfect enlightenment out of compassion for the world. Hard to get to see, even in millions of aeons, you are a son of knowledge for the world in the darkness of ignorance. Seeing the world in error, shrouded in the darkness of nescience, conceiving great compassion, you set out for independence. With pure intention, you seek the enlightenment of Buddhas. You serve spiritual benefactors without concern for yourself. You are not attached to the world. You are independent and aloof. You do not dwell in the defilement of the world. Your mind is free as the sky. You practice lofty deeds of enlightenment, beautiful light of virtues. You appear in the world radiating light of knowledge. You do not leave the world, nor are you stained by worldly things. You traverse the world unattached like the wind through the sky. Just as the Holocaust burns constantly with energy like fire, you carry on enlightening practice. Lion-like great hero, progressing boldly with steadfast vigor, imbued with the power of knowledge, you practice undaunted. All the oceans of principles in the cosmos you will enter, O hero, by serving true benefactors, Kalyana Mitrani. Then the goddess sorrowless Ashoka, having eulogized Sudana, followed him as he went on, bound to him by love for truth. Sudana went into the meeting hall of enlightening beings, which shone with reflections of the cosmos, and looked around desirous of seeing the Shakyan girl Gopa. He saw her in the middle of the hall, sitting on a seat of jewels, which reflected the abodes of all enlightening beings, surrounding by 84,000 maidens, all of royal lineage, who had equally established good foundations of the practice of enlightening beings, who had been won over by her generosity in the past, who practiced gentle, pleasing speech, who were taken with the happiness of approaching the goal of omniscience, who were thoroughly absorbed in the common purpose of complete knowledge of Buddhas and enlightening beings, who were sustained by the loving care, guided by great compassion, universal compassion, who had purified great kindness, universal kindness, who had already developed the inconceivable skill and means of enlightening beings, skill in arts of enlightening beings. All of those 84,000 women were irreversible in progress toward supreme perfect enlightenment. They had comprehended enlightening beings' means of transcendence and needed no one's guidance in the studies of enlightening beings. Their minds were free from all attachments and aloof of all mundane pleasures. They had cleared the way to the undistracted cosmos, and their minds were rapidly approaching omniscience. They were free from the web of all obstacles and barriers, and transcended all attachments. They acted as positive emanations of the body of reality, dedicated to leading all beings to perfection. Their minds sprang from a vast ocean of virtue, and they carried out the vow of the practice of universal good Samantabhadra. They had developed tremendous energy and powers of enlightening beings, and the light of their minds was as a sun of knowledge. Then Sudana went up to Gopa, paid his respects with the deepest bows, and said, I have set my mind on supreme perfect enlightenment, O great Gopa. But I do not know how enlightening beings act in the midst of the mundane world without being stained by its ills, how they realize the equal essence of all things without staying in the stage of personal liberation alone, how they manifest the qualities of Buddhas without stopping the practice of enlightening beings, how they remain in the stage of enlightening beings yet show the sphere of all Buddhas, how they transcend all worldly states, yet act in the midst of worldly states, how they achieve the reality body, yet produce endless physical manifestations, how they resort to the formless reality body, yet manifest bodies like all beings, how they comprehend all the inexpressible truths, yet expound the truths to sentient beings in all languages, how they know there are no beings in the elements of existence, yet do not give up efforts to guide all beings, how they realize all phenomena are unoriginated and unperishing, yet do not give up the effort to serve all Buddhas, how they realize there are no results of action in things, yet do not give up the effort to perform good deeds. Gopa said to Sudana, it is very good that you think it fit to ask about the nature of this kind of practice of enlightening beings, as this is the question of one who is set on practicing the vow of universal good Samantabhadra. So listen well and think carefully, for I will tell you by the power of the Buddha. There are 10 things by which enlightening beings fulfill this kind of enlightening practice. The light of total knowledge, like the cosmic net of the interrelation of all things. There are 10 things by which enlightening beings fulfill this kind of enlightening practice, the light of total knowledge, like the cosmic net of interrelation of all things. What are the 10? Association with superior spiritual friends, attainment of enormous devotion, purity of lofty goodwill, a state of mind founded on oceanic virtue and knowledge, listening to the great teaching of Buddhas, associating with thought devoted to the Buddhas of past, present, and future, equally following the practices of all enlightening beings, gaining the empowerment of all Buddhas, purity of intent, greatly compassionate in nature, attainment of the basic power of mind to stop all vicious circles. Having attained these 10 things, enlightening beings fulfill this kind of enlightening practice like the cosmic net of interrelation of all things, radiating total knowledge. Then enlightening beings with unrelenting vigor, having attained these things, developing and expanding them by putting them into practice on endless ways, propitiate spiritual benefactors in 10 ways. By indifference to themselves, by not seeking worldly goods, by realizing the equality of the essence of all things, by not turning back from the commitment to omniscience, by observing all the principles of the cosmos, by being mentally free of all existence, by independence in the space of truth, where there is nothing to depend on, by freedom from obstruction in the undertaking of all enlightening beings, by entering all lands, by perfect clarification and purification of the unobstructed sphere of knowledge of enlightening beings. Those 10 things, 10 ways, these 10 ways, she told these 10 ways. 10 ways: indifference to themselves, not seeking worldly goods, realizing the equality of the essence of all things, not turning back from the commitment to omniscience, observing all the principles of the cosmos, being mentally free of all existence, independence in the space of truth where there is nothing to depend on, freedom from obstruction in the undertaking of all enlightening beings, entering all lands by perfect clarification and purification of the unobstructed sphere of knowledge of enlightening beings. Those 10 ways, which are another name of all of the 10 transcendences and the 10 Bodhisattva stages. Then by empowerment of Buddha, looking out of the 10 directions, Gopa uttered these verses illustrating what she meant. Those who set out for vast pure wisdom for the welfare of others, and serve true benefactors honestly with tireless vigor, seeing them as teachers, carry out practice in the world like the cosmic net. Those whose devotion is vast as the sky, embracing all worlds of past, present, and future, all lands, beings, phenomena, and Buddhas, theirs is this practice, producers of the light of knowledge. When the will is infinite as the sky, supremely pure, free from the taint of addictions, therein arise the virtues of all Buddhas, concentrating the whole variety of the cosmic net of practice. The wise who rest on great oceans of virtue, inconceivable, infinite, vast as omniscience, as pure offspring of the body of all virtues, they act in the world, unstained by the filth of the world. Those who listen to the teaching of Buddhas and tirelessly catch every nuance are lamps shining with wisdom in accord with truth. Theirs is this practice which lights the world. Those who perceive in an instant of awareness the infinite Buddhas everywhere interrelated, contemplate the ocean of all Buddhas. This is the way into the mind of the enlightened. Those who see the vast audiences of the Buddhas enter the ocean of their meditations and their infinite ocean of vows. This is the practice of those like the cosmic net. Those empowered by all the Buddhas practice universal good for endless ages, reflected in all lands. This is the practice of the lights of truth. The sons of compassion and knowledge emerge steadfast, seeing the misfortune of the world, and disperse the darkness of delusion with the light of truth. This is the practice of those like the sun. Seeing people revolve in the net of existence, the wise stand opposed to the flow of the mundane whirl. Developing the measureless wheel of true teaching, they practice universal higher goodness and wisdom. Those who learn these infinite principles appearing in the world according to people's mentality, with their own bodies like reflected images, develop people in the ocean of being, suffusing the world with myriad expressions of love, showing spiritual practice to people of various interests, teaching them according to their mentalities. The steadfast lead billions to enlightenment. Then Gopa said to Sudana, I have attained an enlightening liberation whose sphere is observation of the ocean of concentrations of all enlightening beings. Sudana asked, what is the scope of this liberation? Gopa replied, having attained this liberation, I penetrate as many ages in this world as atoms in untold Buddha lands, and I know all the beings in all conditions of existence therein, and I know all the deaths and births of those beings, their developments, their accomplishments, the variety of results of their actions. I know their undertakings, good, bad, liberative, non-liberative, certain, uncertain, wrongly fixated, compulsive, non-compulsive, based on good, not based on good, fostered by evil, fostered by good and evil, good by development, bad through neglect. I know the oceans of names of all the Buddhas in those ages, as numerous as atoms in untold Buddha lands. I know the ocean of initial inspirations of those Buddhas, the ways they set out for omniscience, their undertakings of the ocean of all vows. Thus they're heading for previous Buddhas. There are oceans of efforts in the service of previous Buddhas. There are oceans of fulfillment of past enlightening practices. There are ocean of arrangements of means of emancipation. I also know the ocean of those Buddhas' development and guidance of sentient beings, and I know their ocean of attainment of enlightenment, their majestic displays of mystic power in turning the wheel of the teaching, and their ocean of miraculous displays of all Buddhas. I also know the differences in the audiences of those Buddhas, and I know the methods of emancipation of the listeners in those audiences, as well as their past roots of goodness, the variety of their cultivation of the path, and the difference in the purity of their attainments of knowledge. I also know the sentient beings who have been led to individual enlightenment by those Buddhas, and I know the past roots of goodness of those individual illuminates, as well as their attainments of individual enlightenment, the doors of liberation generally developing in their peaceful states, their various spiritual transformations, their development of others, their teachings, and the various freedoms of liberation in their infinite states of our concentration. I also know the ultimate extinction of those Buddhas. I also know the oceans of enlightening beings surrounding those Buddhas, and I owe those enlightening beings first cultivation of roots of goodness, their first inspiration and vows, the variety of their vows, the variety of their production of encouragement, of arrangements, of vehicles of emancipation by all the practices of enlightening beings, the variety of their perfection of provisions for the path of transcendence, the variety of the manifestations of their practices of the path of enlightening beings, the variety of their provisions for advancing through the states of enlightening beings, the variety of the speed of their advance through the states of enlightening beings, the variety of their spheres of concentration in the stages of enlightening beings, the spiritual manifestation of their advance through the states of enlightening beings, their spiritual states during their progress through the states of enlightening beings, their footholds in the stages of enlightening beings, their practices cultivating the states of enlightening beings, their methods of purifying the stages of enlightening beings, their abodes in the stages of enlightening beings, their characteristics in the stages of enlightening beings, their mastery of the stages of enlightening beings, their science of entry into the stages of enlightening beings, the enlightening beings' science of salvation, the enlightening beings' science of development, the different states of enlightening beings, the mystic projections of enlightening beings' practices, the oceans of concentration of enlightening beings, the oceans of methods of liberation of enlightening beings. I also know those enlightening beings' attainment of oceans of various concentration in each moment of consciousness, their discoveries of the range of omniscience, their tremendous flashes of omniscience, their means of attainment of the forbearance of enlightening beings, their plunges into omniscience. I also know those enlightening beings' travels to oceans of lands, their penetrations of the principles of oceans of phenomena, the variety of characteristics of all things, the mystic projections of the designs of all states of enlightening beings, the ocean of principles of various vows, and the variety of oceans of miracles. Just as I penetrate the various oceans of ages of past in this world, in the same way I know the endless, unbroken succession of ages of the future. And just as I know all this in this world, so also do I know in all the worlds within this world. And just as I know thus in all the worlds within this world, so I know in all the worlds in the atoms of this world. And just as I know in all the worlds in the atoms of this world, so do I know in the worlds in the 10 directions contiguous with this world. And just as I know it in the world in the 10 directions contiguous with this world, so do I know it in all the worlds in the 10 directions surrounding this world. And just as I know it in all the worlds in the 10 directions surrounding this world, so do I know it in all the worlds in the radiant world system of Vairochana. And just as I know it in all the worlds in the radiant world system of Vairochana, I know it in all the worlds surrounding the radiant world system of Vairochana. And just as I know it in all the worlds surrounding the radiant world system of Vairochana, I know it in all the places in the world, in the oceans of worlds, in the masses of the worlds, in this whole flower treasury universe, and in all the structures and features of the worlds. And is in this flower treasury universe, so also in all universes, in the endless cosmos throughout space, I know, comprehend and recall all the oceans of the past vows of Vairochana, his oceans of past efforts, oceans of past attainments, persistence in the enlightening practice through infinite ages, methods of purifying lands, means of serving past Buddhas, ways of receiving the teachings of past Buddhas, methods of attaining enlightening concentrations in the past, means of attaining control over utensils, ways of practicing the oceans of virtues of past Buddhas, oceans of ways of perfecting giving, methods of effecting the purification of the conduct of an enlightening being, means of effecting the purification of the conduct of an enlightening being, means of attaining the forbearance of an enlightening being, ocean of force of the vigor of an enlightening being, ocean of methods of fulfilling all elements of meditation, ocean of ways of purification of the sphere of wisdom, means of manifesting reflections of life in all worlds, ways of purification of the sphere of vows, of practice of universal good, samantabhadra, pervasion of all the worlds, ocean of means of purification of all lands, oceans of lights of knowledge of all Buddhas, oceans of spiritual manifestations of accession to the enlightenment of all Buddhas, means of attainment of the range of knowledge of all Buddhas, ocean of mystic manifestations of attainment of enlightenment, ocean of ways of free exercise of the magnetic power of turning the wheel of teaching, oceans of various audiences, the past roots of goodness of all the enlightening beings in all those audiences. There are oceans of initial vows. There are enlightening beings in their oceans of methods of developing and guiding sentient beings. The ocean of sentient beings matured by the Buddhas as he carried out enlightening practices in the past. Those enlightening beings, ocean of means of causing roots of goodness to grow in every moment of consciousness. Their ocean of ways of attaining concentration, oceans of means of attaining total mental command, oceans of means of memory, oceans of means of purification of the sphere of expository knowledge, oceans of mystic manifestation of accession to all stages of enlightenment, oceans of means of affecting the network of practice, oceans of gradual refinement, oceans of knowledge of gradual attainment entering all worlds, and oceans of all faculties, powers, elements of enlightenment, meditations, liberations, concentrations, attainments, and spiritual transformations. And just as I comprehend, know, and realize the oceans of enlightening practice of Vairochana Buddha in the whole cosmos, so also do I comprehend, know, and realize the indivisible oceans of enlightening practice of all Buddhas in all oceans of worlds, throughout the cosmoses, throughout all space. In this way, I comprehend the entry into the indivisible totality of all enlightening beings' practices, entry into the infinite web of illusion, infinite cosmic pervasion, infinite instruction, and indication of entry into the basis of endless aeons of all Buddhas in all oceans of worlds throughout the cosmos to the furthest reaches of space. Why? Because this is the scope of the enlightening liberation, whose sphere is observation of the ocean of concentrations of all enlightening beings. Having attained this, I know the patterns of mental behavior of all beings, the accumulations of goodness of all beings, the means of purgation of defilements of all beings, the variety of deeds of all beings, the doors of concentrations of all Buddha's disciples, the stages of concentration of all Buddha's disciples, the tranquility, liberation, and mystic transformation of all individual illuminates, the methods of the oceans of concentration of all enlightening beings, the ocean of ways of liberation of all enlightening beings, and the ocean of ways of liberation of all Buddhas. Then Sudana asked Gopa, how long ago did you attain this liberation? Gopa replied, as many aeons ago as atoms in 100 Buddha lands, there was a world called producing fearlessness. In this world was an age called superior conduct. In the middle of that world was a set of 4 continents called safe. On the southern continent was a metropolis called magnificent trees, the greatest of 84 billion cities. Each of the cities was built on a ground of blue lapis lazuli and was surrounded by walls made of 7 precious substances and 7 moats of fragrant water with gold sand on the bottom, covered with red, white, and blue lotuses, as big as cartwheels, radiating brilliant webs of light and beautiful scents. They were also surrounded by 7 networks of railings made of jewels and 7 rings of palm trees, and abounded in groves of trees made of 7 precious substances. Above, they were covered with networks of clouds. The grounds of the cities were like a jeweled checkerboards, the plots evenly divided by arrays of various jewels. Groups of mystic adepts lived and roamed there, and birds filled the air with pleasant song. The cities were adorned with millions of parks, and they were prosperous and wealthy. Hundreds of thousands of happy men and women populated them. There were constant showers of beautiful flowers stirred by the wind. Hundreds of thousands of earth spirits lived in them. Furthermore, from the golden nets of wind chimes adorning all the trees came happy voices saying, bathe, drink, eat, practice the teaching, arouse the determination for enlightenment, realize mastery of the stage of non-regression, happiness to you. At that time in the capital city, magnificent trees, there was a king named Lord of Wealth, ruler of the region. He had 84,000 women in his palace. He also had 500 ministers and also 500 sons, all of whom were brave, powerful warriors, handsome and well-built. His queen, the foremost of the 84,000 women, was named Lotus-born. She had a son named Lord of Glory, who was very handsome and bore the 32 marks of a great human, pleasing to the sight of all. Once, as a youth, this prince went, with the permission of his father and mother, to go see one of the parks of the city called Clouds of Light on a mountain of fragrant plants. He went together with 20,000 girls, projecting a great aura of felicity, glory, energy, splendor, and beauty, admired by men and women all around. They got into a golden vehicle with 4 huge diamond wheels and unbreakable diamond axles set in the finest sandalwood. It was ribbed with well-arranged diamonds of all fragrances, splendidly adorned with flowers of all jewels, draped with nets of all jewels, with a lion's seat set in the middle of the interior, arrayed with great jewels. The reins, strings of pearls, were held by 500 girls, and it was drawn by 1,000 thoroughbred horses, fleet as the wind. Overhead was a beautiful sloping canopy made of white lapis lazuli, with a flawless, immeasurable luster, supported by tall poles of blue lapis lazuli, adorned with all kinds of arrays of rare jewels, held by hundreds of thousands of people, surrounding the vehicle, singing and playing music, scattering flowers and burning incense. The 8-lane road was level and free of gravel, set on a bed of all precious substances, spread with gold sand, decorated with flowers of various jewels, lined on both sides with rows of jeweled trees and railings of various gems. Above it was covered with nets of golden bells, adorned with canopies of various jewels, and arrayed with many thousands of jeweled banners, pennants, and streamers. Rows of jeweled buildings were arrayed on either side. In some of those buildings were precious vessels filled with various jewels to be given to those in need. In some buildings were all kinds of precious ornaments for those in need of ornaments. In some buildings were wish-fulfilling jewels to fulfill the wishes of all beings. In some buildings were vessels filled with all kinds of food and drink to be given to whosoever needed them. In some buildings were celestial foods of all of the most pleasant appearances, fragrances, savors, and textures. In some buildings were various delicious crystal celestial fruits. In some buildings were millions of fine celestial garments for those in need of clothing to use as they wished. In some buildings were all kinds of the finest celestial fragrances for those who wanted perfume to use at will. In some buildings were all kinds of utensils for people to see as they wished, to use as they wished. At that time there was a courtesan named Beautiful in that metropolis with whom the king consorted. She had a lovely daughter named Splendor, of delight in virtuous conduct, who was neither too tall nor too short, neither too stout nor too lean, neither too heavy nor too light. She had a black hair and eyes, a pleasant face, and a clear voice. She spoke sweetly and kindly. She was wise, versed in all arts and sciences, clever and diligent, dignified and serene, kind-hearted and gentle, always pleasant to be with. She had scarcely any desire, aversion, or folly. She was modest and conscientious, soft and sincere, free from guile and deceit, self-controlled. She and her mother, accompanied by many gods, got in a jeweled chariot and rode out of the city before the Prince Lord of Glory. Looking for the prince, going according to the king's direction, when she saw the prince, she became greatly enamored of him. Bound by the excessive affection she conceived for the prince, unable to control herself, she said to her mother, "If you do not give me to the Prince Lord of Glory, I will die or suffer torment equal to death." Her mother said, "Do not think this way. This prince has the marks of a supreme ruler, and it is obvious that after his father passes away, he will accord to the throne and become king. At that time, a special woman will appear from the sky. Furthermore, we prostitutes give pleasure to everyone. We do not give one person all our lives as a rule. We have set out to attend the Prince Lord of Glory at the command of the King Lord of Wealth. Do not hold fast to this wish of yours, for it is unattainable." Now at that time, a Buddha named Supreme Sun was appearing in the world, a saint, perfectly enlightened, complete in knowledge and conduct, gone to felicity, supreme knower of the world, gone to bliss, supreme knower of the world, tamer of humans, teacher of celestials and humans, awake, blessed. He was awakened and blessed. He was at an enlightenment site called Light Emerging from the Cloud of Teaching in the Park, cloud of light on a mountain of fragrant plants, where he enjoyed his first 7 days since attaining enlightenment. The girl who was reclining on the chariot saw that Buddha in a dream. When she awoke, a goddess who had been a relative in a past life told her that the Buddha was in the park in his first week of enlightenment, surrounded by a group of enlightening beings before a crowd of all kinds of spirits, and that all the desires of earth, space, water, fire, wind, ocean, all the deities of earth, space, water, fire, wind, ocean, rivers, mountains, night, dawn, forest, trees, plants, grain, cities, foot tracks, sanctuaries, bodies of light, habitations, the sky, and all directions had gathered to see the Buddha's supreme sun. Emboldened by seeing the Buddhas and hearing the Buddha's virtues, finding a favorable opportunity, the girl then spoke of these verses before the prince. "I am known in the world for beauty, renowned everywhere for virtues. None compares to me in the power of knowledge. I know all arts, amusements, and magic. Hundreds, thousands of men look on me with lust. But I have no desire for people of this world. I have no ill will, neither am I pleased by anyone. I have neither anger nor hatred. I delight in the welfare of all. When I saw you, young man, excellent in form and strength, endowed with virtue, all my senses were delighted, and immense joy arose in me. Your complexion is like a pure shining jewel. Your hair is black and curly. You have a fine brow and nose. I offer myself to you. You have excellent features. Resplendent you are like a mountain of gold. In your presence I do not shine. I am like a pile of charcoal. Your eyes are large and dark. Your jaw is like a lion's, your face like the full moon. The fine sound of your voice is irresistible. Please take me in. Your tongue is long and broad, coppery red, soft, shining like a jewel. With your superb, clear voice, you delight people when you speak. Your teeth are even, shining white, clean and well spaced. When you show them as you smile, you delight people, O hero. Your body has the 32 marks of greatness, brilliantly shining, pure. Adorned with them, you will become a sovereign ruler of men. Then the Prince Lord of Glory said to the maid Splendor of Delight, in virtuous conduct, whose daughter are you, whose ward? I cannot make another's ward my own. Then he spoke these verses. O lovely one, endowed with beauty of form, with fine features and a pure body, I ask you to tell me this, whose ward are you? Have you father or mother, brother, husband, or master, or someone else who thinks of you as his, treating you kindly? I hope you are not vicious, do not steal, and are not promiscuous, and do not lie. I hope you do not cause discord, do not slander others, do not covet others' goods, and are not hostile toward anyone. May you not stand on the wasteland of views. Let your intelligence not be taken away by habits. May you not exert bad influence on people by guile or deceit. Do you love and respect your parents, relatives, friends, and elders? Does your heart reach out to give to the poor, to help them? Are you well disposed towards spiritual benefactors who tell you about religion at the appropriate time? Are you truly healthy and capable in body and mind? Do you respect the Buddhas and love the enlightening beings? Do you know the supreme teaching from which the enlightening beings are born? Can you abide by the supreme religion and do not do any wrong? Do you have higher love and respect for the infinite ocean of virtue? Are you kind to the helpless and lost? Are you really compassionate toward evildoers? And are you most happy to see the success of others? Are you indifferent to the power of wisdom? Are you indifferent by the power of wisdom to those who annoy you for no reason? Seeing people in the slumber of ignorance, do you firmly seek supreme enlightenment? Would you not weary of endless ages of spiritual practice? Then the supreme courtesan, beautiful mother of the maid, splendor of delight and virtuous conduct, said to the Prince Lord of Glory, this daughter of mine, who was spontaneously born from within a lotus, has never before gone out of the house. Then she spoke these verses. Listen to what I say, O Prince, about my daughter of whom you ask. I will tell you of her birth and how she grew up. On the very same morn as your birth, my daughter too was born, generated spontaneously in the calyx of an undefiled lotus, all her limbs complete, with nice big eyes. In springtime, the best of seasons, when the crops and herbs are growing, in my beautiful grove of sal trees, I utterly forgot myself. The branches were blooming with most beautiful flowers. The fruiting trees were like dense clouds. Amid the trees with singing birds I roamed, joyful, free from care. I was with 800 girls, adorned with garlands of flowers, wearing various precious cloths, well versed in song and speech. I sat on the bank of a pond filled with lotuses of various scents. The area around, strewn with flowers, was filled by those well-cultivated girls. In the middle of the water appeared a supremely fine lotus with 1,000 petals. Its stem was lapis lazuli, its petals were diamond, its pericarp was pure gold. It had a multitude of stamens of the finest fragrant jewels, and had a brilliant golden sheen. The people were confused. How could the sun rise at night? Then the night ended from the rising sun. Stimulating with its glow, there emanated light and sweet sounds, foretelling the birth of this girl. Then this precious girl appeared in the human world, pure in the best of conduct. No deed is lost to the doer. She was the fruition of good actions in the past. With dark hair, lotus blue eyes, a clear voice, and golden complexion, finely clad in garlands, she emerged from the lotus, resplendent in pure light. As pure light, her limbs are bright, her body evenly balanced, her limbs are complete, her body well proportioned. She shines like a golden statue adorned with jewels illuminating all directions. The finest fragrance of sandalwood wafts from her body, filling the air around her. As she speaks with celestial sweetness, a scent like blue lotus comes from her mouth. Whenever she smiles, heavenly music plays. This treasure of a woman should not be abandoned to the control of the vulgar. In the world of men, no one can be found who is worthy to be her husband except you. A resplendent figure with the marks of greatness. Therefore, please accept this girl, for she is not too short or too tall, too stout or too thin. She is slender at the waist, full-breasted, suitable for you with an impeccable body. She has perfect knowledge of calculation, writing, symbology, and technical literature. She has mastered all the arts and crafts in the whole world. She is expert in archery and always hits her pacifying opponents by her power of attraction. She is ultimately successful everywhere. All her limbs are like pure jewels. She radiates an aura of light. Adorned by the virtues she has accomplished, she is fit to be your companion. She knows the cause of all illnesses that afflict sentient beings. She is able to cure them by the correct use of medicines. She has mastered all the different languages of the people on the continent and the variety of customary usages of society everywhere. She knows the articulation of sounds and the means of differentiation among them, and she is expert in all the songs and dances in the world. She is not jealous or envious. She is not lustful or intemperate. She is taciturn, honest, and gentle, free from anger and harshness, very intelligent. She is diligent, well-behaved, not argumentative, always obedient to the worthy. She is respectful, seeking to do whatever is good. She will do as you ask. She is always compassionate toward the elderly, toward the sick and the poor, toward the suffering and the blind, and toward the helpless. She is always thinking of the welfare of others and never thinks of benefit for herself. Seeking the welfare of the whole world, she is adorned with superior virtues of mind. She is never careless, always mindful and aware, whether standing, sitting, reclining, or walking, whether silent or speaking. She is always remembered and honored. The virtuous one shines in all ways and is always loved by people. None would tire of looking at her, but she has no attachment to the world. Respectable of spiritual friends. Kalyana Mitra, she always wants to see you. For this far-seeing, uncorrupted lady has a pure mind, stable as the polar mountain. Ever adorned with her own virtues, she has no enemies at all. She has no peer in knowledge. She is fit to be your bride, O prince. Then the prince, having entered the park, said to the maid in the presence of her mother, I have set out for supreme perfect enlightenment, whereby I may gather this infinite stores of omniscience, cultivate the practice of enlightening beings for infinite aeons, and perfect all the transcendent ways. serve the Buddhas for endless aeons, uphold the teaching of all Buddhas, purify all Buddha lands, perpetuate the lineage of all Buddhas, develop all groups of sentient beings to maturity, stop the pains of all the mundane world for all sentient beings, lead sentient beings to ultimate bliss, clarify the eye of knowledge in all sentient beings, strive for the attainments of all Buddhas and enlightening beings, abide in the equanimity of all enlightening beings, accomplish all the stages of enlightening beings, purify all sentient beings, cultivate total giving to put an end to poverty of all sentient beings, practice transcendent giving for endless aeons and satisfy all sentient beings with the gifts of food and drink, and satisfy all beggars by giving away all goods. As I practice total relinquishment, everything internal and external is to be given away. I am to give away my son's daughter's wife. I am to relinquish my eyes, head, hands, and feet, all my limbs. You will hinder my giving. You will become unhappy at the relinquishment of beloved children. You will feel much physical and mental pain. You will resent my determination to give up everything. When I cut off my limbs to give them to beggars, you will be pained and grieved. And there will come a time when I leave you to go forth into the tutelage of a Buddha. At that time you will be unhappy. Then the prince spoke these verses to the maid. I'm going to fulfill the immeasurable ocean of provisions for perfect enlightenment. Therefore, with compassion for all, I have set forth forever for enlightenment. For infinite aeons, measureless as air, I will purify my vow. For endless aeons, I will perform the preparations of the initial stage of the Buddhas. I will learn the paths of transcendence from the Buddhas of past, present, and future, and perfect the path of supreme enlightenment by the great means of undiscelled knowledge. I will purify all defiled lands everywhere. I will remove all difficulties and evil ways from all worlds. I will purify all beings who are wrapped up in affliction, blind with delusion, developing them by various means. I will bring them into the path of omniscience. I will accomplish the unobstructed stages, and serve the Buddhas for myriad aeons. Generating kindness toward the world, I will give all gifts. As I am engaged in giving all to beggars who come, to not become depressed or sad or unsympathetic. Seeing benefit for one who wants my head, a wise person would delight in lofty conduct. You would be tormented, so hear my purpose and become firm. You would be grieved at my giving my severed hands and feet to beggars, and speak bitterly, faint and distressed. So hear my purpose and think about it. I will give away my prized possession, even my children. Yet I want you. Hear my aim. If you do not despair, all shall be as you wish. The maid replied to the prince, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Let it be as you say. I will do as you wish. I am at your service and will accompany you wherever you want to go. I will always stay with you and be diligent in all tasks. I will behave as you wish. I will exert myself properly and act in harmony with you. Then she spoke these verses to the prince. Even if my body should be burnt to death in the fires of hell, I would endure it for myriad lifetime as your companion in practice. Even if life after life for endless lives, my body were cut asunder, I would endure it with a steadfast mind if you were my husband. Even if the mountain should crush my head for endless ages, I would endure it unfazed if you become my husband. If infinite lifetimes you may cut off your own limbs and give them to others, lead me to control of my thoughts and make me firm in my duty. I give you my body completely, O Prince of Men, performing spiritual practice for myriad ages. Give me to whoever wants me and I will be happy. You have set out for supreme enlightenment. with infinite compassion for beings, having taken all things into your care, take me into with compassion. It is not for enjoyment or wealth or sensual pleasure that I want you best of men for my husband, but to share the same spiritual practice. You look upon all beings with clear eyes and kind heart, being compassionate with undefiled mind. You will surely become a king of sages. As you walk along, a jewel-like glow from your footsteps remains on the earth, pure. Endowed with the marks of greatness, you will surely become a sovereign king in the human world. In a dream I saw the enlightenment sight, illumined by clouds of true teaching in this kingdom, with the Buddha sitting at the foot of the best of trees in the company of many enlightening beings. That exalted Buddha's supreme sun is like a mountain of finest rose gold. In my dream he patted on my head. In my dream he patted my head, and I awoke then full of joy. A pure-bodied goddess named Light of Delight, who had been a companion in the past, told me the Buddha was here, staying at the supreme site of enlightenment. I had been thinking before that I wanted to see the Prince Lord of Glory, and I was told by the goddess I would see the Prince soon. Now I have seen the Buddha in a dream, and I have seen you, the perfect man. My wish is fulfilled, and I am happy. With you now I will honor that supreme sage. Then the prince, having heard the name of the Buddha's supreme son, and having thus gotten the opportunity to see the Buddha, became very joyful. He showered the maid, splendor of delight in virtuous conduct, with 500 jewels, gave her a shining crown of jewels, and covered her with a precious robe, the color of fire blazing with jewels. And she, thus honored, neither rejoiced nor wept, nor did anything but gaze steadily at the prince with palms joined in respect. Then the prominent courtesan, beautiful, spoke these verses to the prince. For a long dark time I have wished to give this girl to you. Now this beautiful maiden of virtue and quality is yours. There is no girl in the world equal to her, much less supreme. By virtue of her conduct, intellect, and other qualities, she is the best of women in the world. Born of a lotus, there is no question of her class. She cannot be called impure. Her mind is free from the taint of all faults. She is capable of sharing your practice. Her limbs are extremely soft, conveying the finest pleasures of touch. The sick are instantly cured by her touch. The pure fragrance of her body excels all finest perfumes. All men who smell it become pure in conduct. Her body shines like gold, undefiled like a lotus. Angry and cruel people become kind when they have seen her. She speaks kindly, sweetly, pleasantly, a delight to people who hear. When they have heard her, the darkness of evil disperses, and none wants to do anything bad. Her mind is pure, her heart untainted. There is no guile at all in her. What she says is just what she thinks, and thus she thinks, thus she makes people happy. She does not fool anyone by deceit, nor does she lead people on for gain. She is modest and discreet, always respectful to old and young. She is not fascinated by class or looks on followers. She has no conceit or arrogance. She is always humble toward all. Then the prince and the maid, with her retinue of 20,000 girls, left the park and went to the site of enlightenment where the Buddha was, to see, pay respects to, make offerings to, and attend the Buddha. Going by vehicle as far as the vehicle would go, the prince got off the vehicle and approached the Buddha on foot. Even at a distance, he saw that the Buddha was a serene, a sight to behold, senses tranquil, mind quiet, senses under control like a tame elephant, his heart like a clear, still pond. When he saw the Buddha, the prince's mind became settled, and with a clear mind he developed great joy, well-being, and energy that derives from seeing a Buddha. With his mind full of great joy, energy, serenity, and rapture, he paid his respects to the Buddha, and together with his whole company, including the young woman, covered the Buddha with 500,000 great jewel lotuses, and made 500 sanctuaries of jewels for the Buddha, and adorned each one with 500,000 diamonds. Then the Buddha, knowing the prince's strong determination, expounded a scripture called Lamp at the Door of the Universal Eye, upon hearing which the prince attained 10 oceans of concentrations. Absorbed in all principles of the teaching, he attained ways of concentration, such as those called light produced from the ocean of vows of all Buddhas, path of illumination of past, present, and future, going forth into the circle of all Buddhas, entry into the highest range of awareness of all beings, attaining of the scope of knowledge of the causes that produce all worlds, lamp illuminating the oceans of faculties of all beings, cloud of knowledge to save all beings, lamp leading to the development and emancipation of all beings, communicating the cycles of teaching of all Buddhas, multitude of undertakings to purify the practices of universal good. Beginning with these, the prince attained 10 oceans of concentration, absorbed in all the principles of the teaching. The young woman attained a meditation called filled with an ocean of invincible knowledge, and he became irreversible in progress towards supreme perfect enlightenment. Then the prince, paying respect to the Buddha, left the presence of the Buddha with the young woman and the rest of the company, and went to his father, the king, in the city. Greeting the king respectfully, he informed him of that the Buddha, supreme son, had appeared in the world and was staying in the king's realm, having recently attained enlightenment. The king then asked the prince who told him so, and he replied that it had been the young woman's splendor of delight and virtuous conduct. Then the king, hearing of the emergence of the Buddha, felt that he had gained a great treasure, felt that he had found the rare jewel of a Buddha. He considered the sight of a Buddha to be the end of the danger and falling into evil ways. He felt he had found a great physician who could heal all affliction. He thought of the Buddha as a liberator from all the sufferings of the mundane world, as one who leads to ultimate peace and felicity, as one who reveals the unobscured light of knowledge. He thought of the Buddha as the appearance of a great torch dispelling the darkness of ignorance, and felt that he had found a spiritual guide for a world with no guide, thinking of the Buddha as a leader to omniscience for the leaderless. Hearing of the emergence of the Buddha with great joy, the king, lord of wealth, gathered together all the warriors, priests, townspeople, ministers, family priests, princes, and governors, as well as the gatekeepers and courtiers, and abdicated the throne in favor of his son, Lord of Glory, who had brought the joyous news of the appearance of the Buddha. Then, having crowned the prince as king, he went together with 10,000 people to the Buddha, paid his respects, and sat with his retinue before the Buddha. Then the Buddha, looking at the king and the whole assembly, emitted a light from the curl of hair between his brows, a light called lamp of the minds of all beings, which illumined all worlds in the 10 directions, then stopped in front of all the world leaders, displayed inconceivable Buddha projections, clarified the minds of those beings who ever could be taught by the Buddha, and then by the inconceivable mastery of Buddha, by means of embodiment of Buddha, Buddha is appearing in all the world, speaking all languages in the voice of Buddha, expounding a medium of mental command of memory called unshaded lamp of meaning of all things, which was accompanied by as many media of mental command of memory as atoms in a Buddha land. The king, lord of wealth, hearing of this medium of mental command of memory, gained an immense spiritual perspective on all things. As many enlightening beings there, as atoms in the presence of all, as atoms in the continent, attained the mental command of the unshaded lamp of meaning of all things. 60 million people freed from contaminations were mentally liberated. 10,000 people became dispassionate and untainted, and their objective vision of things was clarified. An immediate number aspired to supreme perfect enlightenment for the first time. Infinitely many beings in the 10 directions, by seeing the inconceivable mystic displays projected by the Buddha, reached liberation by way of the 3 vehicles. The king, lord of wealth, having gained great illumination from the teaching, thought, I cannot apply myself assiduously to such a teaching or accomplish such knowledge while living at home. Let me leave home to be with the Buddha. Then he told the Buddha he wanted to receive the precepts from the Buddha and leave home to become a mendicant. The Buddha assented to this. So then the king and 10,000 of his people left home to follow the Buddha. Not long after leaving home, he accomplished the mental command of the unshaded lamp of meaning of all things, along with its subsidiaries, and attained that many concentrations. He also attained 10 mystic knowledges of enlightening beings and plunged into infinite oceans of analytic knowledge. He also attained a purity of body called unhindered sphere of action in going to see the Buddhas of the 10 directions. He received the teaching of the Buddha, preserved it, and preached it, having become a great spiritual preacher and a practitioner of the teaching. By the power of attainment of mystic knowledge, he pervaded the whole world, appearing to people according to their mentalities, telling them of the emergence of the Buddha, illuminating the knowledge, illuminating the nature that produces all Buddhas, explaining the accomplishment of the past practices of the Buddha, praising the miraculous power of the Buddha, supporting the Buddha's teaching. As for the new king, the son of Lord of Wealth, on that very day, the time of the full moon, he attained the 7 treasures of kingship. As he was sitting on the upper palace, surrounded by a group of women, there appeared a great disk called unobstructed momentum, adorned with 100,000 jewels made of gold, shining all over, perfectly formed. There also appeared a great elephant named Diamond Mountain Blaze. There also appeared a horse named Swift as the Wind in the Mountains. There also appeared a great jewel called Supreme Cluster of Sunlight. There also appeared the young woman, Splendor of Delight in Virtuous Conduct, to be his treasure of a wife. There also appeared a treasurer named Mass of Abundant Wealth. There also appeared a military leader, the 7th treasure, called Untainted Eye. Endowed with these 7 treasures, he became king sovereign, ruler of the 4 continents, just, commander of the law, victorious with the power and vigor of the people. He also had a full 1,000 sons, strong and valiant, destroyers of enemy armies. Under his just rule, the earth was free from war, free from evil, free from calamity, prosperous, peaceful, pleasant, and well populated. In each of the 84,000 main cities on the continent, he had 500 sanctuaries built, complete with all the finest features, equipped with all utensils, supplies, and facilities, adorned with gardens, buildings, promenades, and delightful groves. In each sanctuary he also had Buddha memorials built high and wide, adorned with many arrays of jewels, and he invited the Buddha's Supreme Son to all these cities, where he presented the Buddha with inconceivable offerings of all kinds. The miracle of the entry of the Buddha into the cities fostered virtue in innumerable people, and all those with disturbed minds attained tranquility, while those with calm minds developed the intense joy of seeing the Buddha. Those who were full of joy attained purity of will for enlightenment, while those whose will for enlightenment was pure developed great compassion. Those of good will became involved in the quest for all Buddha teachings, while those who knew the principles of the Buddha teachings set their minds on meditation on the intrinsic nature of all things. Those who had realized the equality of things set their minds on realizing the equality of past, present, and future. Those who had attained the scope of knowledge of past, present, and future entered into the light of knowledge of the succession of all Buddhas, while those who had entered the knowledge of various manifestations of Buddhas set their minds on the salvation of all sentient beings. Those engaged in the salvation of all beings vowed to complete the path of enlightening beings, while those who had realized the equanimity of the path generated the light of knowledge to bring forth the cycles of teachings of all Buddhas. Those who were ready for the guidance of the ocean of teaching set their minds on pervading the network of all lands with their own bodies, while those who realized the equality of lands undertook to know the faculties of all sentient beings, and those engaged in consideration of the faculties of all sentient beings in accord with their inclinations purified the determination to reach omniscience. Entering into the fulfillment of such benefits for such people, the King Lord of Glory had the Buddha's Supreme Son enter all the cities to develop and guide those people by the inconceivable vision of the miracles of the Buddha. Now, who do you think that Prince Lord of Glory was? You should see him as none other than this Buddha, Shakyamuni, who at that time was a prince named Lord of Glory, who attained kingship and was on good terms with the Buddha's Supreme Son. And who do you think the King, Lord of Wealth, Father, Lord of Glory was? You should see him as none other than the Buddha, Jewel Flower Light, who at that time was a king named Lord of wealth, who attained supreme perfect enlightenment at an enlightenment site symbolized by reflection of the moon, and expounded the teaching, surrounded by as many enlightening beings as atoms and untold Buddha lands, on a world called shining lamp of the aura of Buddha, in a world system called family, born of a diamond reflecting past, present, and future, in the center of an ocean of worlds called multitude of reflections in the space of the cosmos of realities, which was to the east past as many oceans of worlds as atoms in a world. Furthermore, that ocean of worlds, multitude of reflections in the space of the cosmos of realities, was purified by that Buddha jewel flower light in the course of his past practice as an enlightening being, and all the past, present, and future Buddhas in that ocean of worlds were ripened for supreme perfect enlightenment by that Buddha jewel flower light as he carried out the practice of enlightening beings. Now then, who do you think was the Queen Lotus born at that time, mother of the Prince Lord of Glory, foremost of the 84,000 women? You should see her as none other than Lady Maya, mother of the Blessed Buddha, progenitrix of the enlightening being Vairochana, established in unobstructed liberation of universal light, direct witness to the appearance of the countless multitude of all Buddhas, who knows the manner of manifestation of birth of all enlightening beings. And who do you think was the great courtesan beautiful? You should see her as Sunetra, wife of Dandapani of the Shakya clan, who is my mother, and who was her daughter, splendor of delight in virtuous conduct. You should see her as me. Who do you think were in the retinue of the King, Lord of Wealth? They were these enlightening beings seated here in this assembly, guided by the Buddha to the fulfillment of the vows of universally good action, with the body reflected in all worlds, mind unadulterated and unfragmented in all concentration seats of enlightening beings, eyes seeing the being and countenance of all Buddhas, ears hearing the utterance of all Buddhas, breaths in control of all spiritual stations, voice going to all Buddha lands, the body of an enlightening being ceaselessly going to the audiences of all Buddhas, entering the network of all places by production of embodiments suitable to develop and guide according to the mentalities of those to whom the enlightening beings appear, arriving at fulfillment of the vows of practice of universal good, Samantabhadra, unbroken throughout the ages. The King, Lord of Glory, and I, furthermore, attended the Buddha's Supreme Son as long as he lived, providing him with the necessities of life. After that, Buddha passed away entirely. A Buddha named Pure Body emerged in that same world, and we honored and served him. After that, we served in succession Buddhas named Moon reflecting knowledge in all limbs, King of golden light, adorned with marks of greatness, Mount Moon blazing with a web of brilliant light beams, Paragon of observant knowledge, King illumined with great knowledge, adamantine energy, invincible power of knowledge, all-observing knowledge, cloud of pure light, crown blazing with lights of knowledge, banner of lights of virtue, energy of the sun of knowledge, limbs like blooming jewel lotuses, lamp of felicity, radiance of multitudes of rays of knowledge, moon shining everywhere, powerful lion illumined by universal knowledge, moon of cosmic mind, reflection in the space-like mind of beings, tranquil and well-balanced, ubiquitous sound of silence, cluster of images in a network of light rays of stable knowledge, radiance of the mountains of network of light rays, radiance of the mountain of immortality, thunder of the ocean of truths, crown of light in the sky of Buddhas, moon of light beams, face of complete knowledge, luster of flowers of pure knowledge, glorious light of a mountain of jewel flowers, light of myriad stars of virtue, knowledge emerging from the heights of concentration, jewel moon, circle of flower flames, sublime jewel radiance, unhesitating in practice of universal knowledge, blazing lamp topped with a sea of flames, king proclaiming the mansion of truth, fame for peerless virtue, moon reflecting past vows, lamp of meaning with space-like knowledge, lord of the sky, born of truth, king filled with shining light, paragon of spirituality, chief in knowledge, lotus in the ocean of truth. Beginning with these, there were 60 decillion Buddhas in that world whom we honored, served, and provided with food and clothing, medicine, and furniture. The last of those 60 decillion Buddhas was one named Energy, born of great zeal for truth. When that Buddha came to town, I, as wife of the king, together with my husband, made all kinds of offerings, and then heard an exposition of the teaching from the Buddha called lamp produced by the emergence of all those who arrive at thusness. On hearing which I attained the eye of knowledge, and attained this enlightening liberation whose sphere is observation of the oceans of concentration of all enlightening beings. Cultivating this liberation for as many aeons as atoms in 100 Buddha lands, carrying out enlightening practice with the enlightening being Vairochana, I associated with countless Buddhas during those many aeons. In an aeon I might serve one Buddha or two, up to an inexpressible number of Buddhas. Some aeons I served as many Buddhas as atoms in a Buddha land, yet never did I know the size of the enlightening being's body or what it looked like, nor did I know the enlightening being's physical, verbal, or mental actions, nor his knowledge and vision, his range of knowledge, or his realm of concentration of knowledge. As for those who, seeing the enlightening being carrying out the practice of enlightening beings, develop pure faith through various association, all of them were taken care of by the enlightening being by various worldly and transmundane means, and because associates of the enlightening being, and became associates of the enlightening being, associating with the enlightening being as he carried on enlightening practices, they never regressed on the way to supreme perfect enlightenment. Having attained the enlightening liberation whose sphere is observation of the ocean of concentration of all enlightening beings, when I saw the boundless energy born of zeal for truth, as I cultivated this liberation along with the enlightening being for as many aeons as atoms in 100 Buddha lands, I propitiated, served, and attended all the Buddhas who emerged in those ages and heard, took up, and remembered their teachings. And I attained this liberation from all those Buddhas by various methods, by various enunciations of principles and systems of scriptures, by various bodies of liberation, by various doors of liberation, by various liberative meditations and procedures, by various ways of access, by entries into various oceans of Buddha lands, by various visions of Buddhas, oceans of Buddhas, by entry into various Buddhist assemblies, by various paths following the oceans of vows of enlightening beings, by carrying out various paths following the oceans of vows of enlightening beings, by carrying out various practices of enlightening beings, by accomplishing various practices of enlightening beings, by various manifestations of the scope of the endeavor of enlightening beings, yet I still did not enter the enlightening beings' universally good liberation, samanta bhadra vimoksha. Why? Because the ways of liberation of the universally good enlightening beings are infinite as space, infinite as the thoughts of all sentient beings, infinite as the ocean of time periods of past, present, and future, infinite as the ocean of places, infinite as the ocean of structures of the cosmos. Indeed, the ways of liberation of the universally good enlightening beings are equal to the sphere of Buddhahood. For as many aeons as atoms in a Buddha land, I gazed at the enlightening being, never tired of seeing him. Just as countless illogical thoughts and illusions arise in the mind of a woman and man full of passion when they get together, as I watched the body of the enlightening being in every moment of consciousness, I perceived infinitely various indications from each of his pores, the range of world systems, their various foundations, various conjoining arrangements, various configurations, various mountain ranges, various arrays of the ground, various arrays of clouds in the sky, various names and numbers of aeons, emergence of various Buddhas and formations of lineages and successions of Buddhas, various adornments of enlightenment sites, various occult powers involved in the Buddha's teaching procedures, various arrays of Buddha's audiences, various concentrations of scriptures, productions of various vehicles of emancipation and various manifestations of pure light, the like of which I had never seen before. By ceaseless effort from each of his pores, I saw in each moment of consciousness infinite oceans of Buddhas, various adornments of enlightenment sites, various mystic operations of the teaching, and various miraculous proclamations of scriptures. From each of his pores, I saw in each moment of consciousness infinite oceans of beings, various houses, gardens, mountains, palaces, rivers, seas, and dwellings, various physical bodies, various goods, various actions and efforts, and various forms of development of faculties. From every one of his pores, infinitely various ways of entering past, present, and future became perceptible. Infinitely various oceans of vows of enlightening beings were purified. Infinite oceans of differences of the practices of the stages of enlightening beings became perceptible. The infinitely various purities of the transcendent ways of enlightening beings became perceptible. Infinitely various oceans of past efforts of enlightening beings became perceptible. Infinitely various oceans of ways of purifying Buddha lands became perceptible. Infinitely various oceans of the universal love of enlightening beings, oceans of universal love for all beings, and ocean of heroic efforts to develop and guide all beings descended into the world. Infinite oceans of the universal compassion of all enlightening beings arose. Infinite oceans of the great joy of enlightening beings grew. And in every moment of consciousness, infinitely various oceans of efforts to take care of all sentient beings were accomplished. In each moment of consciousness, through these aeons numerous as atoms in 100 Buddha lands, I perceived oceans of principles of the teaching from each pore of the enlightening being, and never reached the end, even though I did not go into what I had already gone into, and did not attain what I had already attained. Thus I did by going into the ocean of various ways of liberation of the enlightening being, even when he was the Prince Siddhartha in the royal palace surrounded by women. I perceived infinitely various oceans of principles of past, present, and future through each of his pores. By penetrating the ocean of ways into the realm of reality, I only know and have attained this enlightening liberation, whose sphere is observation of the oceans of concentration of all enlightening beings. As for me, that's all I only know, all I know. How can such as I then know the practice, tell of the qualities, or show all the ocean of the virtue of the enlightening beings who have gone into the infinitely various oceans of liberative arts and means, who purposely appear physically like all beings, who appear to act in accord with the mentalities of all beings, who emanate infinitely various appearances from all their pores, who realize the purity of essence and nature of all bodies, who are free from discriminatory thought because of awareness of the space-like quality of the nature of beings, whose intellect reaches everywhere with certain discernment, occupied with spiritual powers equal to those who arrive at thusness, who produce miraculous displays of infinite spheres of liberation, who have mastered the state where they can enter the vast cosmos of realities in a thought, who roam freely in the ocean of liberation of the all-sided stage of all truths. Go, Sudana, go you to Lady Maya, mother of the enlightening being, who is sitting on a great jewel lotus throne near the blessed Vairochana. Go ask her how enlightening beings become undefiled by the taint of worldly things while they are carrying out the practice of enlightening beings, how they become unflagging in serving all Buddhas, how they become undeviating from the ends of the actions of enlightening beings, how they become free from all hindrances to entry into the liberation of enlightening beings, how they become unfixed to all states of enlightening beings, how they come into the presence of all Buddhas and do not stop their efforts to take care of all sentient beings, who do not cease enlightening practice for all time, do not regress from the undertaking of the great vehicle of universal enlightenment, and do not become discouraged in maintaining and increasing the roots of goodness in the world. Then, by the empowerment of Buddha, Gopa, wife of Shakyamuni, of Siddhartha, Shakyamuni spoke these verses illustrating this way of liberation. Those who see the best of people engaged in the practice of perfect enlightenment all go to join him, be they friendly or inimical. I remember as many aeons as there are atoms in 100 lands, there was an excellent world of outstanding light with an age of supreme magnificence. In that age, in that world, were 60 decillion Buddhas, the last of them best of stages, sages was a lamp of the world, spiritual paragon. At the time of that Buddha's demise, there was a glorious king who had conquered all enemies, a king of kings with unobstructed knowledge. He had 500 sons who were heroic, brave, and handsome, physically perfect and pure, adorned with unexcelled splendor. The king and his sons had faith in Buddha and made great offerings to the enlightened. They always followed the true teaching and were unshakable in application of a practice. The king had a brilliant son, a pure being adorned with 32 marks of a great man. Giving up his kingship, he left home together with 5 million people. Having gone forth, he worked with firmness and energy to preserve the teaching of the Buddha. There was a city full of trees, born best of a million city. There was a city full of trees, best of a billion cities. There was a forest there of various trees, quiet and most beautiful. There the king's son sojourned, experienced, intelligent, clear-minded. He elucidated the Buddha's teachings to purify the spirit of defiled beings. Gathering wise people, he entered the city, composed of noble mien and serene appearance, his gaze steady, mindful, aware, his action profound, walking steadily. There was an excellent town, banner of joy, and a grandee there named Resounding Fame. I was his beloved daughter named Shining Light, more beautiful. I saw the shining prince and his retinue as I stood in the door of my house. He was handsome with the marks of greatness, and I became very happy on seeing him. When he passed my door, I put a pearl in his bowl. Then, taking off all my jewelry full of love, I gave it to him. With an impassioned heart, I made a gift to that enlightening being, and for 250 aeons did not fall into evil states. I was born among celestial divinities, or as a human princess, in an endless form. I always saw the prince. Then I was born as a courtesan, saw the prince and fell in love, made myself known to him and became his obedient wife. He and I together made offerings to the Sage Supreme Son with pure faith, and having seen that Buddha, I was inspired to seek supreme enlightenment. During that aeon, 60 decillion Buddhas emerged in the world. The last of those Buddhas was energy of zeal for truth. Then my objective eye was clarified, and I became aware of the essence of things. My continuous errant conceptions were silenced, and I attained this illumination thenceforth. After that, I observed this stage of concentration of enlightening beings. In a mental instant, I see unthinkable oceans of lands in the 10 directions, and I see in all directions various pure worlds, infinitely wondrous. Seeing them, my mind does not cling to them, nor is it repelled by defiled lands. I also see the enlightenment sites in those lands, and all the Buddhas there, and I behold in one thought their measureless oceans of light. In the same way, I see their oceanic congregation in an instant of awareness unimpeded, and know all their concentrations and all their immeasurable liberations. I also keep their myriad practices in mind, and penetrate all the principles of the stages, and in each and every instant I enter into the countless oceans of their vows, observing the body of the true man for endless aeons, and carrying out his practice. I have never seen an end to the surroy of the mystic projections emanating from his every hair, and I see oceans of lands beyond number on the tip of a single hair, with their masses of air and water, fire and earth, on various foundations with different forms and different and diverse patterns of structure of various types, according to distribution of elements with an endless variety of adornments. I see each of the untold realms in the measureless ocean of lands, and I see the Buddhas therein, guiding people by articulating truth. I do not understand his activities, his speech, his mind, or its action, or his mystic powers and miracles, or great sublime practice, though I have been working at this for aeons. So hearing this, Sudana deeply bowed and paid his respects, and then took his leave of Gopa. We dedicate the merit of this session, wonderful, miraculous meeting of Shakyamuni and Yashodhara in previous life as king, prince of light, and paragon of lover of virtuous beings, beautiful lover of virtuous beings. And we dedicate the merit to becoming one with such Buddha Vairocana, such Buddha Shakyamuni, such Buddha Gopa, such Buddha Lady Maya, as quickly as possible, to make all beings become exactly equal to us